Welcome to the IT Financial Management Week virtual conference. I'm Nan Braun, the CEO of Thavron Solutions, and as a member of the advisory board for IT Financial Management Week, I'm so glad you're able to carve out time to join us here online. I'm certain that this event will provide you with lots of interesting insights into how some of your peers have found success, and that talks like mine will give you thought starters about how to continue to improve your operations. As Chris mentioned in the previous talk, the COVID-19 pandemic has had impact on all of us. For those of you coping with personal impacts, my thoughts and best wishes go out to you. Today, if possible, I want to focus us on the larger organizational impacts of the changes in our economy and society over the last couple of months. These have hit both private and public sectors equally, if in different ways, but they're a great life lesson on how having the correct structures and the correct metrics for your services can help your business be resilient through times of change. While every IT department in the country had to cope with the shift to remote work, we've already talked through that immediate firefight and the impacts to IT finance in a previous live stream event. For IT to be most relevant and most impactful to the business, today, I want us to shift and think about the impact the pandemic is having on the organization outside of IT. Some of our clients are seeing huge impacts in the form of revenue downturns, while others are seeing increases in product or service consumption by customers. Some of our clients are also supporting the business through complete pivots in focus and product line. Electronics manufacturers are now building test kits. Auto manufacturers are building PPE. Clothing manufacturers have shifted to producing masks. While this pandemic is an extreme case of a market shift, and globally, mind you, market shifts and business responses are not new, and we're already working, struggling in some cases, to deal with the increasing pace of change in an ever more digital business. IT will continue to deal with them even after we settle into our new normal. This means that there always have to be people in IT who are having conversations, building relationships with the folks in the rest of the organization. Why? Because IT is the business investing in itself to be better at what it does. Better might mean more efficient, more cost-effective, or it might mean more responsive to a rapidly shifting marketplace. For IT to provide the most value to the organization and to have impact to the bottom line, to empower and enable the organization, you need to treat your IT service portfolio like an investment portfolio. So how do those portfolio managers think about, manage, and measure investments? The first thing is to create a policy statement. That is something that is a mutual understanding between IT and the rest of the organization that reflects the organization's goals and constraints as it relates to your budget. That means that although you have to manage your budget within IT, that budget has to produce a certain set of measured results for the rest of the organization. It means that you need to understand the organization's strategy and align to it. IT too often has a habit of being tactical. Do I have enough money right now in the budget? How much have I spent year to date? Am I over, under? Can I deliver the things that the organization is asking for right now? We take snapshots. Do I have the right people? Do I have the right infrastructure? Is there enough time? So much time we spend responding to issues, putting out fires, right? We are really expert in IT at responding to crisis and doing crisis management. And certainly the huge successes that IT organizations around the globe have just proven as they shifted tens, hundreds of thousands of workers to remote work, a whole new way of dealing with business, proves that when the fire hits, we can deliver. But that's all tactical. And it's important to be able to deliver, but it's more important to have that strategy, to know that what you're delivering is aligned with something that's going to have a positive impact to the rest of the organization's mission. Once you understand the organization's mission, then you can develop the strategy for IT. As executives and as an IT finance professional, you have the ability to reflect the organization's needs and goals in your budget. You don't have to talk to them just about the dollars that you're spending on the IT stuff you need to buy, whether it's people or servers or software, but how that money that you're spending is enabling and empowering them to do the things that they need to deliver and design and build. Once you understand how your products and services need to be designed, or your existing products and services map to the needs of the organization and the capabilities that they need to deliver, then you can execute. And that's something that IT is very good at. Hey, let's pat ourselves on the back a little bit. When it comes to execution and implementation, this is where IT rocks. And we prove this over and over again, whether it's a global SAP deployment or a large PeopleSoft upgrade or new warehouse implementations or responding to a pandemic. When the rubber hits the road, IT powers the car, right? We make things go very well. What we're not always good at is measuring the results of that. We're not always good at going back and making sure that we accomplished the ROI that we thought we were going to deliver, that people were as satisfied as we thought that they would be, that we actually eliminated the risks that we set out for. And so those are the metrics that we want to focus on today. We want to talk about how we can measure our service portfolio to know that the design and delivery of those services or products and how they plug into the full service value stream have been successful. Once we've selected the metrics that make sense for our organization, then it's important that we have a process and we operationalize monitoring and updating the plan for how we're going to manage that investment, that IT budget investment. You will find that sometimes in their life cycle, a service needs to change. And if we're not monitoring those metrics, we respond to a crisis rather than being proactive and empowering and leading the rest of the organization. So let's take a look. We'll start talking about metrics with what are the typical advanced IT KPIs. And I put that advanced in quotes on purpose because with a cost management mentality, this is sort of the pinnacle of where people want to go. But really, this is just our launching point. So you're used to seeing goals of being able to show heat maps of critical project status and be able to have dashboards where you can easily see where those products stand with cost and time. You're used to maybe having goals to understand your spend to budget variance, if you're really good by organizational unit or even by type of activity within IT or the IT towers, right? You might be measuring high priority ticket counts and their status, monitoring. You might even have weekly or monthly calls to work with your help desk and understand response and response time. And you probably do some workforce reporting, right? Maybe spend per region or spend per role if you're really good. Might even be looking at management spend ratios. 20 years ago, this was advanced. 20 years ago, this was a goal that we were working towards inside of IT. Today, with the speed of business change and the digitalization and pervasive presence of IT through all of work, this has to be just your starting point. This is basic cost risk management. Instead, we really want to look at a maturity value curve for modern IT finance, where we can plug the IT service value chain into the larger service value chain of the rest of the organization, where that value stream is evident, where the value that IT is providing to the organization is a constant conversation, where it's not just how much does IT cost or how much has IT saved, but the value that you deliver to the organization every day. And so we need to move beyond cost management and through internal transparency to mature our organizations to external transparency, where we're having proactive conversations with the organization. And through this, we want to look at the opportunities for portfolio optimization. And although this shows as the very last step of maturity, the high esteemed goal, you need to start thinking about this and managing this throughout the life cycle. You want to be fully developed by the time you hit that end state, but as you'll see in talks throughout the rest of this conference, there are people having portfolio optimization and successful value conversations with the organization as early as internal transparency. Now, when we first engage with clients, we often find that they're feeling very overwhelmed. There's new data to manage. There's lots of data they've never seen before. There's new people to have conversations with. There's new processes to develop. There's a shift from financial reporting to financial analytics, and it's not just dollars and cents, it's operational data and it's labor data, and bringing all that together to develop new insights to help IT be more nimble, more responsive, and empower the rest of the organization better. But I want to reassure you that this journey is possible, and over again we've seen clients have great success in moving through this process and seeing positive and proactive change with their organization. Achieving that success means a shift to service value metrics. So we still want to talk about cost, value, risk, and satisfaction. But in every case, we want to emphasize the value that the service that we're measuring is providing. So you'll see that the cost looks not just at the cost center or the GL account code, but the cost of providing a value or providing a capability to the rest of the organization. This shift in mentality is a true mind shift, right? And even before you have data that's aligned, even before all your systems are in place, if you start thinking about this differently, you start acting differently, and you can deliver different value to the organization. Most people, when they think about cost, think about it as, is my spending on track? What's my variance? How much of my budget do I have left? If they're really advanced on that, they're thinking maybe how much of it is run or transform the organization. But better ways to think about it are things like, how is IT spend aligned with your corporate initiatives? And even better, how are you impacting business revenue? How do you measure things like that? What are the value metrics around cost that you should be measuring? When we think about those cost metrics for your portfolio, the first thing I want to do is to encourage you to move away from just snapshot views of what is this month, what is this quarter, what is my year to date, but to really focus on looking at trends, because trends will uncover insights for you that your immediate snapshot can sometimes hide. And even better, look at trends in variance. So you might look at your trends in variance to budget for each of your run, grow, and transform categories. Or you might look at your trends in spend by the percent of your variance to your target. So maybe you have a target for your variance for that month or that quarter, and where are you in that percent, and are you starting to hit those? Every organization has initiatives. Right now, everybody that we're talking to has at least one, and that's dealing with COVID and tracking that spend. But I'm sure that you've got other initiatives, and those are things that are trying to make the organization more competitive in their marketplace. And so you should be able to address where your spend is targeting those initiatives and talk to the organization about how the things that you're doing are empowering their initiatives. So these are not initiatives like, I want to update my aging infrastructure, or I need to put in a software upgrade. These are initiatives related to things that, like, the sales team might have initiatives, or launching a new product line, or developing a new service, or serving more of your citizens in a certain way. It's also good to be able to talk about your cost, not just in terms of things that IT does, like compute and storage, but in terms of things that your customers are consuming, like how much do you spend on IT per head? How much does it cost you to onboard? Or what's the IT cost as a percent of revenue? Let's talk a little bit about value, because cost and value are not the same. Too often you'll hear somebody say, oh, we can help you to show the value you're providing to the organization, and then what they're doing is providing cost transparency. But value is something that has meaning to the consumer, not just the producer. And so when we think of the value in a portfolio, we want to look at the business value of those services that were delivered. And we want to make sure that we're seeing realized value from the projects that are delivered. Maybe you'll even be able to see profit impact as you mature along this. You certainly want to understand efficiencies delivered, not to IT, but to the rest of the organization. How are you empowering sales? How are you empowering the retail outlets? How are you empowering the state clerks who have to deliver new licenses and things that go out to the public? So again, tying this to improving the business value chain, and so you're tying that IT value. So what are the metrics? How would we measure the value of a service, the business value? One of the best ways is to look at what your revenue impact was. That's also sometimes one of the hardest ones. You really have to understand how to link your IT value stream to the overall product line value stream or the service value stream. That data does exist out in the organization. And with a focused effort, not overwhelming, but it does take a little bit of work, you can get to the point where you can measure your actual IT impact to the bottom line of what's happening for the organization. Also impactful, but much easier to get to, is to understand how your services are ranked according to their business value, where business value has a calculation based upon the business ranked priority along with the IT ranked difficulty to implement and deliver. And so this is a metric that involves the business and IT coming together to really understand this. But it can be done with much less effort and still give really interesting results as to how you view your portfolio. Just internally, you should understand what percent of your services are actually achieving their defined ROI, because we all are defining ROI for our services, right? Or, if you're not quite there, where are you in the progress? Because especially if it's a new service, a lot of times there's an upfront investment. So we know that it's not going to be an immediate achievement of that ROI, but we should have goals for when we're going to hit it and where we will stand when we get there. Being able to categorize your projects and understand which projects are improving critical business services and where they stand and what that improvement was, and which projects are improving services that maybe are less business critical, will help you not just to define and manage your service portfolio, but also is data that's useful and interesting to the people managing your project portfolio. Risk was the other big factor. And risk was always a consideration for IT. In a digital world with hacks and cybersecurity, risks were a huge concern, and now that we've remotely dispersed our workforce and have many more potential vulnerabilities, we always were concerned about those security risks. But there are also risks with your staffing. There are risks with vendors and vendor lock-in. There are risks with aging infrastructure for many of our clients. So you need to think about risk management and risk mitigation from the full picture, and you understand that full picture when you've tied this back to the business value. When we look, IT's used to doing risk metrics around cybersecurity and breaches and things like that, but we want to think about risk value metrics. So you really need to think about things like staffing and how IT staffing has an impact on the services that you need to provide. Where do you have gaps, not just now, but where will you have gaps 6 months from now, a year from now, for those services that you're developing out? How many or what percent of your staff are near retirement? New Jersey just made national news because they were desperately looking for COBOL programmers to support their unemployment claim system. Where do you have mission-critical systems that require specialized skills? And who are the people that have those, and where are they in their life cycle with your organization? How are you making sure that you have seamless coverage for those? There are even technologies today that can do things like give you insights into which people they think are looking for new jobs. What's the satisfaction of your staff, and where are you at risk for losing people just because they're not satisfied with where they are today? Vendors are another big area of risk that too many people don't look at. Are you at risk for vendor lock-in for critical services? Or do you have too many vendors for those important services? What's going to happen when those services are fully overloaded and you need support? How will those vendors play together? Again, we always want to tie our projects to ideas and topics that are related to risk. So maybe infrastructure aging is a risk for you. And so you should be able to show how those projects are helping to mitigate those risks. So part of our risk value is looking at mitigation of risks and not just prevention or exposition of what the risks are. We are used to the typical kind of percent of infrastructure at or beyond its end of life and trends and impact of security events. But we want you to take those to the next step, not just, 40% of my servers are going to be at end of life within the next year, but what's the cost impact of that? What's it going to cost to replace them? What's it going to cost if you don't replace them and they fail? And what's that going to cost the business? So understanding the cost of risk all the way out to the end of your value chain and not just what happens to your immediate cost center budget. Satisfaction was the last leg of what we wanted to look at for types of metrics. Some people are really good at this, and they're regularly sending out satisfaction surveys to their clients. They're looking at how well IT did at satisfying the rest of the organization. And we also need to understand how projects are trying to improve different satisfaction issues that come up. What are those metrics we can use to really measure satisfaction around services in our portfolio? A really useful one is the utilization and uptake trends in business services. And this is not just for managing availability or balancing resources, but it gives you a really interesting insight into what's important to the business, especially in areas of the business where maybe they're resistant to that conversation that you're trying to have. If you suddenly see a sudden spike in usage in a service that has been stable previously, then you know something's changed. They're doing things differently. They've made a change that means that that service is now more important to them, and that gives you data to go to them with to initiate that conversation. If you see a sudden drop in utilization, that is often an indicator these days that they weren't really happy with the service as it was. They just weren't telling you that. And now they've gone and they've found some other solution that's a SaaS solution that didn't involve IT at all, and they're out there engaging with somebody else and have a completely new way of getting their job done. And you need to, first of all, make sure that they've done this in a way that complies with corporate standards and all of that, but also to understand where the gaps were and how you can maybe provide what they need, a lot of times more cost effectively, but if not more cost effectively, just gives you an opening to have that conversation and build the relationship better. And if they're really not going to use it, then that gives you the opportunity to retire applications, to retire infrastructure, to reassign people, to move things around, to optimize your utilization of resources as well. You don't want to find out a year later that you were staffing something and running systems and churning out lots of reports every night that nobody was looking at. You should understand when you look at your service portfolio, what's the ratio of your consumer-facing services to your IT services. So we always have IT services, the technical services that we need to manage internally. But if the majority of your portfolio is just talking about technical services and you've only taken one or two of those to a business service, then you have growth to do. You're not yet fully engaged with the business. If you have 100% business facing and you've stopped looking at your internal technical, then that's going to put you at a different kind of risk. So you want to make sure that you have a good balance there, and that for each of those services you have some insight into what is the percent of support service for the cost or utilization for each of those services. That is, what percent is just delivering the service, and what percent is supporting the service. And that support might be help desk. It might be development. Maybe you have that application that everybody has where the business is constantly coming back and asking for tweaks and asking for changes and having bug fixes, right? Like, why is it that that one application is eating up 80% of your development resources for your cost center? Is that something that you can fix? Is there a way to streamline that to make that service more cost effective? I know that all of this can feel really overwhelming. There's a lot of inputs. To answer all of these questions at once, it could be collecting a lot of data and pulling a lot of pieces together. But I want to reassure you that you don't have to do it all at once, and you're not alone in this journey. Let's take some of this and put it into a little bit of perspective. ITIL 4 really is focused on the IT value stream and the service value chain, right, which is looking at that service portfolio and all of the ways that the value of that service is built, which means we have to tie it to the organizational value, and that's wrapped in guiding principles, governance, and practices around how you deliver those things. So if you think back to what we talked about, right, cost, value, risk, and satisfaction, all of those are going to have some guiding principles. So if you know what your guiding principles are for those four legs, then you're going to be able to set the right metrics for measuring those guiding principles. If you know what your practices are you an agile house? Are you DevOps? Are you fully outsourced? Are you fully insourced? Do you have a goal for some blend? Then you're going to be able to set the right cost and satisfaction metrics for the services that you're managing. So always remember to put this in perspective. You want to measure the metrics that are right for your organization and not just metrics because somebody listed them out and told you it might be a great idea. So just a reminder, when you're evaluating your services, When you're looking at those things that you're delivering today or considering new services, you should be able to define what is the business value. Can you measure the cost to develop and operate those? Can you build a service cost model and understand what those cost drivers are? Do you have the capability to deliver the service? And if not, what is it going to take to develop that capability and to maintain it? What risks to the enterprise does this service patch? Or what risks to the enterprise could this service potentially open up that mitigation will have to be taken to? How does a service fit into the overall IT strategy? And that IT strategy should be aligned with the organizational strategy. So if you are doing something that doesn't support a service that makes the business more empowered and able to provide, or you're not developing a new service, you shouldn't be doing it, right? You want to make sure that things you're doing are not just because we've always done it that way or because it's a cool technology that everybody else is doing and so you feel like you don't want to have that fear of missing out. You need to make sure that the choices you're making fit the strategy for the organization that you're a part of. Understanding where your dependencies are is a big challenge for a lot of people, and that service cost model can really help to highlight those and to help you better understand your cost drivers and your infrastructure and people dependencies. And so we find that going through that exercise of building that model, you end up with not just a dollar amount at the end of the day, but a much clearer vision of how your organization works and how the pieces and parts fit together. And then we always remind people not to forget a business case, right? You should never develop and deliver a service unless you understand what the ROI is for the organization at large. I know that even at that simplified view, it can still sometimes feel a little bit overwhelming. And so Thavron is always here to help and partner with people if you want to, because your success is our goal. In addition to our traditional consulting to support you through things, we have also pivoted this year and have launched a virtual classroom where all of our workshops and trainings are now virtual instead of in person. And there are free resources out there as well as opportunities to purchase different classes and advance your skills and capabilities in your employees. Our goal is to empower you every step of your way and allow you to move through the journey at the pace that makes sense for your organization. But right now, I'd like to take some Q&A. So if anybody has questions that have come up through the course of the talk, now's the time to raise your hand. We'll also check here and see if anybody's put questions in as we were moving forward and address those. I'm looking forward to some conversation. So I've got a couple of questions here in the queue, but if this raised any questions for you, be sure to type it into the little Q&A box, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. You can also reach directly out to me at the email on the screen and drop us a note anytime at all. I'm always glad to chat and talk with people about brainstorming their low-hanging fruit or their opportunities or how to get around something that feels like a block to you. I've got a question here from somebody that says they're not familiar with the term values. So that's a good question. I'm sorry I didn't clarify that during the talk. It's actually an older term. It goes all the way back to industrial engineering that's been going for quite a while now. Product and manufacturing have been using it, but it's recently been adopted and is being popularized by ITIL 4, if you haven't looked at the new ITIL versions. And a value stream looks at all of the things that are inputs to making something or delivering something, and then relating that to the actual value of the thing that is produced. So whether it's people, materials, time, information, all of those things go into a value stream and produce something. And so tracking that is something that it actually has a very well-defined discipline, and we're excited to see IT start to adopt that. I hope that answers that question. Feel free to holler if yeah, Wanda says, what is the best way to classify products and services as run, grow, and transform? Nice question. So run is often thought of as kind of keep the lights on, right? The things you need to keep doing what you're doing today at the same rate that you're doing it. Grow would be how to do those things, but to do more of it, do it more efficiently, to expand what the organization is doing. And transform is something that's going to allow the organization to do new things or different things. I hope that answers that question. Feel free to holler if you need more clarification. I've got another one here that says, what's the difference between a service and a product? This is an interesting debate going on out there right now. There's a lot of talk at Gartner about products and the shift to thinking of products. We like to think of a product is the encapsulation of a service, whether it's an application service or some other kinds of service that you're doing, plus all of the project work that you're doing to develop that service, to enhance that service, to maintain that service, right? So thinking of it like product is a more full life cycle delivery and way of measuring that. Hope that helps a little bit. Let's see if we've got anything else coming in here. Somebody says, the metrics look really valuable, but the data seems impossible to get. How much effort does this take, and is it really worth it? Well, first off, yes, it is worth it, and I think you'll hear in other talks as this goes on that people who are starting to think about things as a service portfolio will tell you absolutely. It is a game changer. You're not going to do it all at once, right? So there's no way you're going to go out tomorrow and start working on all these things at once. And that's why I said you really need to keep this in perspective, understand what's most important to your organization, align with that, and pick one or two things that you're going to start working on. In some cases, people have been able to get data and start those conversations and things happen really quickly. In other cases, you may have people in the organization that are resistant to this or they don't want to change the way that they're thinking about it. The data might be manual still, so it can take a year or two before everybody's on the same page. And so that's why it's important to kind of pick some early winners so you get ROI along the way, and then take the ones that you know have that really long lead time and be working those in parallel so that you can see results as you go along and yet still make progress on those ones that you know are going to take a lot of work to get there. Any other questions? It seems like we've got all the ones in the list here. Feel free, you've got a few minutes still. Okay, I've got another one. Any books that are helpful on this topic? I'm aware of the one from Cisco Press. That's a Cisco Press, a good one. So portfolio management in general, there aren't many books out there for this. We are trying to get more discussion and more writing out on the web on this. We've done a couple of white papers on it, so glad to send you the link for that. If you want to drop me a line with your email, I'm glad to send you that. Or you can just go find it out on our website. There are great books on ITIL and the value stream, and if you want to think about the IT value stream and how to define it and how to plug into that, it's going to have a lot of impacts for IT finance going forward, and so we'll be talking about that more as the year progresses. If there's a specific topic that we talked about that you're looking for books on, let me know. Hopefully that helped a little bit. It is a new area of growth, so there's not a whole lot that's been published. Okay, we got just a minute or two left. If you have any Q&A, you can type them in your little box. If I could do a poll, I would do how many of you have started this journey, and interested to know how many of you this has inspired to start something. So feel free to put a question out there that's really more of a comment than a question if you like. Carlene, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. We got about 5 minutes till time. Do we give people time for a little bit of a bio break here before logging into the next session, which I know is going to be a great one?
I mean, there are no more questions coming in, but what would be, maybe a final parting words for everyone listening to this presentation?
Oh, great point. So first off, thank you guys so much for attending and spending time with us. And we've got a couple other questions that came in. As one of the advisory board members, it was exciting to help IQPC put this together, and we hope that you find it really, really valuable. I know that the rest of the talks over the course of the next day and a half are going to be really exciting ones, some great examples of real-life situations from people. And I think the important thing that I really, really just want to keep emphasizing is that thinking differently is the first step to this journey, and just changing the way that you think can start to revolutionize the way that you act. And then as you start to think differently, you're looking for different data, you're building different relationships. You will get to a point, depending upon your size, that you want to put some pieces of automation in, whether you end up buying an off-the-shelf package. There are several different vendors out there, or if you build something yourself. But there are lots of ways to achieve that, and you can start to get results very early on. Somebody asked, will the slide deck be shared with participants? We will have the slide deck posted on our website no later than Monday. The team will be working on it Friday, so over the weekend if you're doing stuff, but as far as work days go, by Monday it will be available out on our website. What are the top 5 KPI metrics that a CIO needs to answer? Well, that is much more than a short kind of question. But I'll summarize categories. Like, think about what a CIO needs to answer, right? And the first thing, they need to have some sort of a cost metric. And so they're going to be looking at trends in variance, the budget. They want to know how they have been trending to their variance has been trending, right? So not just how much did I spend, but was I spending the right amount in the right time? You want that value metric, so they're going to want a KPI that shows them their ROI achieved, and either a dollar amount or a percent to a target that they'll be able to then share back with the rest of the business and talk about, hey, we partnered with you, we agreed that doing this is going to save you $5 million here and $20 million here, and yep, that actually happened. And so understanding that. Risk metrics, you need a risk metric in there. Which one you pick is going to depend on your domain. People in finance have slightly different ones than in healthcare. They have slightly different ones than people who are making movies. But there are different risk metrics, and so understanding the risks that are most important to your business and publishing that out there. Satisfaction metric, you'll need something that talks about your success in delivery and what the uptick of services is over time. So that's 4 of your 5. And then the 5th one should be a metric related to achievement to initiatives. So whether you have a modernization initiative or a cost optimization versus spend to COVID, or whatever that table of initiatives are, you want a KPI or a metric in there that's looking at progress towards initiatives. I hope that helps. I'm glad to talk much more about that with you. Feel free to reach out. Got somebody who says, have you seen any examples of IT financial metrics displayed in Tableau? Absolutely. If so, can you speak to which ones? So, off the top of my head, I can't name names. But I will tell you that Tableau is a great flexible BI platform if you've adapted it in-house. Several clients that we have taken that and are pulling the data out of their IT financial management system and are then putting it into common corporate Tableau dashboards and fields. So glad to follow up with you on that, Holly, and talk about how that can be done. Any advice or guidance on developing value KPI metrics that can apply for both waterfall projects as well as agile sprints? Yes, but we are definitely out of time to deal with that, Mike. I apologize, but there's actually some really good examples of this. I'll try and write on this in the next month, but if you email me, I'm glad to do a quick call or some email exchanges and give you more details on that as well. Got a couple people here who were just commenting back, thank you very much, saying yes, they have started the ITFM journey, and somebody who is starting to implement Aptio who is working on their automation system. So glad to hear you guys are making some good progress out there. All right, now we really are at time, Carlene. So thank you guys for the great questions. It's awkward to not have that face-to-face, back-and-forth dialogue. We're anxious and excited to be able to do that with you guys again, hopefully next year for IT Financial Management Week. We'll see you in person. But we are here, and we are engaging and talking to clients every single day, so feel free to reach out to us, and we can get on a call or a Zoom or a WebEx or a Teams meeting or whatever is your choice. I hope you guys have a great rest of the conference.
Perfect. Thanks, Nan, for that presentation, and thank you, attendees, for sending in your questions. We hope to see you back here at 1 p.m. For a presentation from Globe Life and how they successfully developed a high-performing team culture. Thanks, everyone.